Greetings, everyone, and welcome virtually to Concordia. I'm William Kraft, president of the college. At Concordia, our students learn, work, and lead for the sake of the world. And they have done so throughout this most strange time that began almost a year ago today, when so much changed so fast. They have done so through the dedication of Concordia's imaginative and courageous faculty and staff. They have done so with your wonderful support, both in regular giving and in special generosity to meet extraordinary student needs over these past 12 months. Thank you. It pleases me to tell you on this March 2021 morning that we will end this academic year as we began, with in-person education on campus. And we will open in-person, on-campus education this coming fall. Thank you all for joining us today. And I turn now with pleasure to my colleague, Professor Chris Mason, Dean of Concordia's Offutt School of Business. Chris.
Thank you, President Kraft. Welcome to the Offutt School Presents Speaker Series. I'm Chris Mason and have the honor to lead the Offutt School of Business of Concordia College. And I'll be your host this morning. We're delighted to welcome Commissioner of the Big Ten Conference, Kevin Warren, as our featured speaker, and are also very thankful to have Troy Simonson, CEO of Revo Health, to moderate the conversation. From the beginning in 2012, Concordia College Offutt School of Business was founded to unify the richness of our liberal arts education with the rigor of a first-class business training. We continue to work to provide a premier undergraduate business education focused with a global perspective, entrepreneurial mindset, ethical decision-making, and transformational leadership. I'm especially pleased to update you on a couple of exciting developments. As you can relate with your work and personal lives with COVID, the challenge this year has been interesting. But I'm happy to report, however, that our student visits are actually up. We are 28% ahead of last year in our student visits to campus for this coming fall. And our deposits are also up 28%, which is very encouraging, especially considering we had a 22% increase in the Offutt School freshman class last fall. And the majority of the growth is occurring because of significant increase in the applications from young women. Bolstering our already talented faculty and staff, we've hired a director of entrepreneurship, Bree Langmo. Bree brings an incredible amount of expertise and energy to the Offutt School and is working towards creating an entrepreneurial leadership institute. Her vision in this will be to serve as a global leader for training and transformation centered around having an entrepreneurial mindset and will span all industries and endeavors. Finally, our Holstead mentoring program is going strong, despite the fact we really can't meet in person this year. Throughout the pandemic, we've been able to host well-attended virtual events that connect our female business students with Concordia alum working in various industries. This is just one of many programs that help our students excel academically and get a head start on the professional life. My thanks to all alumni and mentors for their impact you're making with our students. As we continue to evolve, improve, and innovate, it's important to give thanks to all of you who have supported the Offutt School from its founding. Today's event is generously sponsored by Revo Health, Dean and Ryan Hogginson with Remax Real Estate, Next Century Growth Investors, as well as Herc and Associates. Please note we also have a slide of sponsors afterwards going through the names. It's really been quite a year. Gathering together for a cup of coffee and breakfast today would be ideal. I know I certainly miss the events and the meetings with colleagues and friends of the college. However, coming together like this in this format does expand our audience. Today, we have alumni and friends from across the country and the globe. As we begin our program, please make sure to write questions in the chat function, and we will do our very best to answer as many of them as time permits. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our conversation moderator, Troy Simonson, and our featured speaker, Kevin Warren. Troy is a 1995 graduate of Concordia College, where he majored in business and healthcare financial management. As the CEO of Revo Health, Troy oversees a large healthcare management services organization that is focused on delivery of value-based care and creating service-driven cultures. Revo Health was formed in 2017 out of Twin City Orthopedics, and today has partnerships with multiple healthcare entities. Prior to moving to his full-time spot at Revo, Troy spent 16 years with Twin City Orthopedics, most recently serving as CEO. Kevin Warren was selected as the 6th conference commissioner in history, joining an esteemed lineage of Big Ten commissioners. He officially began his tenure in January 2020. During his first year of service, Warren launched a series of groundbreaking initiatives to address issues associated with mental health and wellness, social justice, voter registration, and the international COVID-19 pandemic. Warren previously served as the Chief Operating Officer for the Minnesota Vikings. He was the highest ranking African-American executive working on the business side for a team in the NFL, and the very first African-American Chief Operating Officer in NFL history. Please join me in welcoming Kevin Warren and Troy Simonson.
Thank you, Dean Mason and President Kraft. Very excited to be a part of Offutt School Presents and this morning's program. I just make a brief statement here and then turn it over to Kevin. But Kevin is a great friend, mentor, business partner. And one thing I want to warn all of you today is following this morning's talk, you may walk away wondering, is Kevin for real? I'll be honest, the first time I met Kevin, I had the same question as I walked away. And what I can tell you is he is one of the most genuine, authentic individuals that I have been able to know. His passion for life is just truly off the charts. And best of all is he functions with what I see as just a high degree of ethics. So with that, it's my privilege to introduce to you Kevin Warren, and we definitely will have time for questions following Kevin's talk, and look forward to having that conversation.
Troy, thank you very much, and the feelings are mutual. And again, I'd like to thank President Kraft and Dean Mason just for the invitation, and also another important portion is Brent Johnson, who's handling all the IT today. And if I've learned one thing during the COVID is you better have good IT people. So thank you for getting all this set up. And then just a special thanks to Troy Simonson. And I don't use the F word often, friends, but Troy is a friend, and it really is special when you have an opportunity to do business with someone who you really care about. And Troy and I have been able to do some great things together in the Twin Cities, and he's a consummate professional, a wonderful human being, a great dad, a great husband, and a great friend to me, who I trust with everything. And I've just grown to really have a great respect and admiration regarding, Concordia, because as my parents would always tell us, when you walk out of the house, you represent the Warren family and your lineage of all the people who had to pave the foundation to get my siblings and me into the position to be able to go to school. And so many of my ancestors didn't have an opportunity to do that. And one thing that makes Concordia special, is the fruit off the tree, the lineage. And when you look at graduates such as Mike Solberg and Todd Lee of Bell Bank, and then Troy Simonson of Revo Health, and I could go on and on and on of some of the Concordia graduates who I've had an opportunity to do business with. There's a certain theme, a certain thread that runs through all of those graduates. They are people of integrity, they're hard workers, they're transparent, and they have a commitment to excellence, and not only reaching forward, but also reaching back to try to pull people forward to make the world a better place. So my life is better. My world is better. My family is better because of the many people who walked on the Concordia campus who now have work in the world who have touched my life. So with that, I would just like to give a thank you to the environment that Concordia College has built. So again, I think Troy and had asked me to just spend a couple minutes to try to take tell the summary of my life, how I sit here today as the sixth commissioner in this 125-year history. And because I spent 21 years in the NFL, when I used to hear stats of how few coaches that the Pittsburgh Steelers, had in their tenure, that I would always scratch my head and say something must be wrong with that. But the probably only statistic that really blows me away every single day is when I sit here and think the Big Ten Conference was formed at the Palmer House in 1895. So we just celebrated our 125th anniversary, and that there's only been a handful of people, only 5 individuals who've held the position of commissioner since then: John Griffith and Tug Wilson and William Reed and Wayne Duke and Jim Delaney. I'm a big history person, so one of the things I asked our branding department to do when I moved in my office at the Big Ten was to find a picture of each one of those individuals. And they actually found a person had actually done a portrait of each one of them, and they were in the corner in the basement in our building, and they dusted them off and cleaned them up and put them in new frames. And so that's what I see coming in and out of my office every single day, because I just to focus on the history. So I'm humbled, I'm honored to stand before you today. I was born in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. My parents were both educators, and I could talk a whole day. I could give a whole seminar at the Offutt School of Business on my mother and my father. They both had a story, but they were both educators. They raised my 6 brothers and sisters. I'm the youngest of 7 kids, in a manner of to do the best you possibly can, leave every situation better than it was when you arrived. That education was the key. Quite naturally, growing up in the household of 2 educators, we had enough to live. We were what you called, middle class, but we definitely were not going to be able to rest on the financial laurels of our family. So they focused on, with me and my other siblings, that education would be the key for us to normalize and level the playing field. And so although I was a student athlete in college and throughout my entire career, my parents made it very clear that education was the great equalizer. And so school came first. You did your homework first before you got a chance to play sports. You had to do well in school. They weren't concerned about grades. I can tell you this: my parents never looked at one of my report cards. What they did, they just evaluated my effort. And so I've always been an effort person. Just give it your best effort, extreme effort, intense effort, and don't worry about your grades or the results or how many points you score. Just give it with effort, because if you give everything that you do, whether it's your marriage, whether it's raising your kids, whether it's being a business leader, whether it's your worship service, just have extreme effort, and effort will create results that you'll be really proud of. So we grew up in South Phoenix, Arizona, an enclave that was about 99% African American. Interestingly enough, we lived directly across the street from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because he was from Chicago, had emphysema, but had a home in Phoenix, Arizona. So we had all these homes that were relatively small. Our home with our 7 kids was about 1,300 square feet, and he had about a 6,000 or 7,000 square foot home, but he built it in the Black community. But our neighborhood did start having some challenges, and my parents made the determination to move to Tempe, Arizona. At that time, finally, after many, many years of giving great effort and trying to get to the point, my dad, late in his life, finally was given a professorship that he earned at Arizona State University. So we did move to Tempe. So I had a normal life, and my oldest brother set the tone. He's 20 years older than me, so he was the second scholarship football player at Stanford University. But to put it in context, is he actually took the Greyhound bus from Phoenix to Palo Alto. So that kind of tells you just the when I talk about effort that my parents put into us, and my brother had. And he's the only person I know who graduated from Stanford, but because of the love of the great country we live in, he actually volunteered to serve in Vietnam, then had a brilliant 37 career in banking, was probably one of the greatest athletes ever to come out of Arizona, but suffered a torn ACL in the early 60s. And unfortunately, TCO was not there, because he probably would have been the first dual sport athlete in football and baseball to play professionally. But he persevered, and he's my hero, someone who I looked up to, and as I said, had a wonderful career in banking. But I grew up in Tempe. We moved there when I was probably 10 years old, and one of my first summers in Tempe, I went out for a bike ride, headed up to the local high school that I would eventually attend, and heard a kind of weird sound of tires screeching. And I said, boy, that sounds a little bit too close for me, but actually was run over by a car. And a family was just moving into our neighborhood looking for homes. They lost control of the car, hit me. I flew somewhere between 30 and 40 feet and landed on a really small patch of grass, and had some serious injuries, but one of which was I broke my right femur. And Troy, being in the business of orthopedics, he understands what that is. I had a compound fracture of my right femur. If you haven't done it, broken your right femur, trust me on that, don't do it. It's the largest bone in your body. But with such force that I got hit with the car over, and then landing on the ground, it was the most pain that I have ever had to suffer and endure in my life. And I read yesterday about Sean Bradley, the NBA player who was hit by a car and is paralyzed. And I even said, just thank God again for sparing my life. And although the injuries that I had to deal with a broken wrist and a broken femur and some other injuries, they all were able to heal. And so I had the opportunity to spend many weeks in the hospital and traction, the way they used to do it in the old days. And I thought that was bad enough. And I thought it was time for me to go home when the doctor came in and said, everything's looking well and it's healing well. But then he gave me the news that I was going to be put in a full body cast that went all the way down to my toes on my right foot and 3/4 down my left leg. And it had a metal pole in between and came all the way up to a little bit below my throat. And so for the next couple months, I laid in my bedroom. And when I say I've been flat on my back, I really have been flat on my back, and spent time in a body cast. And it was a traumatic experience because as a young 10.5-year-old boy, wondering if you're ever going to be able to walk again, my love for sports, I was gaining weight, in the cast. My parents were still working, and so they would have people come by and check, on me. But just to lay there, and there were many dark days and dark nights where I just had to really push through it and had to pray through it, and to really just. But I promised God that if I would get an opportunity to walk again, that I would spend the rest of the days on earth, of changing the world, of helping people, of reaching forward, of reaching back, of doing the best that I possibly could do with the time that I had left. Because fortunately, I was one of those people that recognized that life is a gift. Every day is a gift, and it's so easy to take for granted something. I don't take anything for granted, and Troy knows this, and Todd Lee probably knows this, but Troy, really knows it. I try to attack every single day like it was my last day. I probably too much so, but I attack every single meal that it was like the Last Supper, because I almost had my last meal. I almost had my last day. I almost took my last breath. And so whether it's a workout or a relationship or a business deal, whatever it may be, I just want to go at it with all of the energy that I possibly have to leave a legacy, to do the best that I possibly can, because you never know when that last day becomes. And so once I got the body cast cut off, my doctor was not warm and fuzzy, and he had told me that I would have not much of a chance to have a normal life and to be an athlete like I was before. And so I asked him, I said, what would give me the best opportunity to succeed. And he said to swim. And so I did get a very small settlement from the accident. And so I approached my parents and said, the doctor said I need to swim to give me a best chance. We didn't have a pool in our backyard. And so I asked my parents, I want to spend some of my settlement money to build a swimming pool. And they looked at me in a kind of cross-eyed manner and said, what do you mean? That has to be your college money. And I told them very point blank at 10 and a half years old that if I don't get my body right, then my mind won't be right. And I probably won't be going to college. And I think they could tell that I was really serious. And that was probably the first time that I understood what it meant to be an entrepreneur. That was the first time I really understood what it means to write the check. You know, so many people in life have great ideas, but they aren't willing to write the check. I was willing to write the check out of my own account. And I'll tell you this, it's a great feeling at 10 and a half years old when you can actually write the check, because then I could direct the contractors around, because it was going to be my swimming pool that I shared with the world. But when they finished the pool, I swam before school, after school, every opportunity that I could get, did exercise in the pool. And it really is what saved my life. And 6 years after that accident, I was able to really get going again. And 7 years from the accident, I was able to play my first Division I college basketball game as a freshman at 17 years old at the University of Pennsylvania. And so I actually wrote a book all about it. It's called Build Your Own Pool. I'm going through the final read through now, and my hope is that it'll be able to be released later this year. But that experience, and I've said it before, really has catapulted me for the remainder of my life. And I felt like I had an unfair advantage because I recognized as a young boy that life is fragile. But I went on to the University of Pennsylvania, had a really good freshman year. Ironically, my teammate, who was a senior, fifth-year senior, Fran McCafferty, is the head coach at Iowa. So, but had a chance to play as a true freshman. We got a new coach in because our existing coach who had recruited me from Tempe, Arizona, actually then took the Arizona State job. And so I transferred, you know, again, being somewhat young, being a little immature. And I transferred home, and I stopped at Arizona State for a little bit, but I finished up at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona. And ironically, this weekend, I'll be in Indianapolis watching Grand Canyon University take on the University of Iowa. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that game, to have been able to have a relationship with Fran as head coach of Iowa, Iowa being in the Big Ten, and then me being a graduate of Grand Canyon. But I was very fortunate to stay healthy, didn't miss any games, and was able to be blessed with 2 really great years at Grand Canyon. And after Grand Canyon, I got my MBA at Arizona State. I was in a joint program, MBA JD, and I had a sister who became very ill, who happened to be living in South Bend, Indiana. And so I matriculated to South Bend, lived in her basement, cared for her and her 2 young kids while I went to law school at Notre Dame. So many times people at Notre Dame will ask me what brought me there. And did my parents go there? My grandparents? I said, no, I had a sister who was sick and I went to care for her. She was the same sister who took care of me, who lived in the hospital with me during my accident. So it was always, I felt truly blessed to be able to repay what she had sacrificed to me during a time of illness. I was able to repay her back and care for her. And ironically, those 2 young kids, who was one who was probably about 3 years old and one who was 6 years old, are both lawyers now. And you never really know the impact you can have on people, not only verbally, but just your presence. And maybe they would have become lawyers anyway, but it just seems strange that both of them are now practicing lawyer. The older daughter is a practicing family law lawyer in Washington, D.C. And then my nephew, the younger son, is a practicing corporate lawyer in Phoenix, Arizona. So after law school, I was fortunate to go right into sports, to work in sports law with the former iconic commissioner at the Southeast Conference named Mike Slive. And then I started my own sports agency. I represented players in the NFL for 5 years. The business grew astronomically. And then I had a decision to make. Do I stay in that business or do I go into the NFL? I had a chance to meet a gentleman by the name of Dick Vermeil, who's like a father to me. And so I spent 4 years at the St. Louis Rams. I remember when I went to the Rams, we were the losingest franchise in the 90s. And in 3 years, we were able to pull a great team together of many of the attributes that individuals who attend Concordia have. And that is just, like I said, hard work, integrity, just transparency, consistency, energy. And then and we were able to pull it all together with the greatest show on turf, Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk and Orlando Pace and Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt and Grant Wistrom and London Fletcher, and the names go on and on and on. And we won the Super Bowl in 3 years. And that's when I recognized of what a team can do. A team does take talent, but it's not all about talent, because sometimes they're a group of talented individuals, but they're not a team. And we had talent, but it was the fact that Coach Vermeil built an environment of being of the team, the power of the team. And so it was an absolutely splendid experience. I didn't recognize how hard it was to win a Super Bowl. And I remember Coach Vermeil was always about just building that team and that culture. And he had asked Howie Long to come in and talk to us right before we flew to Atlanta for the Super Bowl. And Howie Long talked about how his rookie year on the Raiders, he came in and they made it to the Super Bowl, but lost. And he told himself that, hey, you know, I'm a rookie. We made it to Super Bowl and lost. If I stay healthy and have a long career, I'm sure I'll be back here multiple times and win multiple rings. He never got back to the Super Bowl. And so his message to us, go get the ring when you have an opportunity to get the ring, because you never know when you'll have that opportunity again. And that really resonated. And so fortunately, we won a Super Bowl. Coach Vermeil retired. I spent another year after Rams after he retired. And then I got a big promotion at the Detroit Lions. So at the Rams, I was vice president of player development and football legal counsel. And then I went to the Lions, the senior vice president of business operations and general counsel. I did that for 2 years. And I went back into private practice to my law firm that I had interned with in law school, which ironically where my nephew works now at Greenberg Traurig, an international firm. And I got a call and got an opportunity to help formulate a group who was going to buy the Minnesota Vikings. And we're able to actually bring the Will family, pitch them on the deal, because the gentleman who called me was a guy by the name of Reggie Fowler, who was a businessman in Phoenix. I didn't know personally, but he had heard me speak and asked me to help him. And then I had a really close friend who had a college roommate who had done business with the Landis and Will family. And it's just amazing how it takes all these things to come together. And so I took a red-eye flight to New York, sat down with the Wilsons, said, hey, we got an opportunity to buy the Minnesota Vikings from Red McCombs, and went through the deal. And they said that we're in. And that's how the Wills basically had an opportunity to buy the Vikings. And after I worked on the deal, and I remember at the closing dinner at Skadden Arps, we did all the signing, went to the closing dinner, and I was getting ready to fly back to Phoenix to go back to my private practice. And Ziggy said, hey, now how does this work? You know, what happens here? Is the owner, Red McCombs, going to meet us there and show us around and walk us through all the staff? And I said, Ziggy, the moment that wire hits the bank, then you probably won't see Mr. McCombs again. And he said, well, can you go to Minnesota to help us set up? So I changed my flight and flew from New York to Minnesota just to get things set up. And I told him I would come up there for a year to help him get set up and go back and forth and commute from Phoenix. And that year turned into 15 years at the Vikings. And we were able to do some great things together, bring a Super Bowl to the Twin Cities, build a world-class practice facility with Troy Simonson and his partners at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, which is the best in the world. And I say that sincerely. And build an incredible stadium at US Bank Stadium, build an incredible team. And I know they'll ultimately get a Super Bowl trophy in the Twin Cities. And then one day out of the blue, I was leaving Washington, D.C., taking a car up to New York to do my monthly meeting with our owners, because that's where they live. And I had got a call from President Eric Kaler. It was a Sunday afternoon. We had just taken 50 kids to the African American Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. on a field trip. And then we had spent a day at the Holocaust Museum. So it was a really emotional weekend. But President Kaler called me on Sunday. I said, this is kind of strange. I hope everything's okay. And and he said, "Hey, I'm chairing the search committee for the next Big Ten commissioner." And so my mind started racing of thinking like, who could I refer to him? Because I'm sure that's what he's calling it about, a referral. And he said, "I wanted to see if you'd be interested," and said, had never thought about it. And so ended up having a meeting with the search committee, and went within a matter of literally weeks, was offered the job to become the sixth commissioner of the Big Ten Conference. And so I took a couple months to make sure all of my everything was tied up. I wanted to make sure the new person, Andrew Miller at the Vikings, that I had time with him. And so I spent weeks with him to try to give him the best chance to succeed because of all the nuances with the Vikings. And then I started my job at the Vikings, at the Big Ten on September 16th of 2019 as commissioner-elect, because Jim Delaney, who had been there for 31 years before I arrived, and I worked together for 3 months. And then we went to the Rose Bowl, and Wisconsin played Oregon, and it was an absolutely spectacular night if you've ever been to the Rose Bowl. But it was one of those magical nights, about 75 degrees, clear, just beautiful, low humidity. And I remember after the game, they had set up a set in the parking lot for a Big Ten Network, and he actually formally passed the baton to me, and I was so excited, and went back, had a nice dinner with my family, and then I took an early flight the next morning to fly from Los Angeles back to Chicago to start. So January 2nd is when I officially became commissioner. And it was interesting. I got a slew of all these leadership books from friends and family members of the first 100 days, the first year, and hear all the things that you were supposed to do. But no one sent me a book called The First 72 Days, that a global pandemic would come in and just really rock our world, and especially college athletics. So 72 days after I officially started, on March 11th, we canceled the men's basketball tournament, and that's when it really started. And so I say this honestly, almost back to my accent, I really believe, and I'll wrap up here, that you really learn the most about yourself, about people, about life, about business, about relationships, about grit, about honor, about integrity, about transparency, about wisdom, about vision during a time of crisis. And last year was a time of crisis. And I recognize, and now I don't say anything that I deal with to say that something was hard, but I just say something was important. I just saw something in the chat room, so we lost sound. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, I can still hear
Okay.
you.
All right. So I don't use the word hard anymore. I use the word important. Last year was an important year. It was an important year for us as a country. It was an important year for us as people, and all of the issues that we had to deal with the social justice issue from Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and all those different issues. But for us to pull together, but even from a medical standpoint, from a sports standpoint, and even throughout all that, we were able to, in the Big Ten Conference, to always keep our student athletes at the center of our decisions, work through some very complicated issues, but to work through voter registration and mental health and wellness and equality coalition. And we stayed the course. We worked hard. We had built a collaborative relationship in the Big Ten. We had some tough days. We had to work through to make sure that we were aligned, and then to end up having our teams play in bowl games and have Ohio State play Alabama in the national championship game, and then to have 9 of our men's basketball teams in the tournament, and 2 number 1 seeds, 2 number 2 seeds, and 7 of our women's basketball teams, and just to have everything come together, it truly, truly, truly has been a blessing. So with that, that gives you a little background of how I ended up today. I will continually, for every single day that I spend at the Big Ten, give them all of my energy, do the very best I possibly can, but also be grateful to people like Troy Simonson and the relationship that we have developed. So with that, Troy, I think that gives a summary. I'll turn it back over to you, and I'll take any questions that you have, but it really has been a pleasure to spend time here with you this morning.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the message, and yeah, amazing run to this point in your life, obviously, and much more to come. I think we do have a few questions already. I will try to work through those as much as I can here. One of the first questions just want to ask to you, Kevin, is I know that we have some young and future leaders in the audience, some students, I believe, and help them understand what characteristics what do you look for in your leadership team? And as you put together a tremendous team, obviously with the Vikings, you're putting together a team or have a team now at the Big Ten, but what do you look for in those leadership traits of your team members?
Yeah, Troy, great question. Two things I really look for is really purpose and for people who, what I call is what's their why. What's their why? I mean, why are they doing this? And so many times I meet not all young people, but a lot of people, and you know how I am. I take phone calls, I get resumes, and I'll meet with anyone because just a simple word can change people's lives. But so many times people now ask the questions, how much money, do you make? And do you get a chance? I've had people ask me, do you get a chance to go to the games? And that's not a why. I want to ask people, like, what's their why? When they wake up in the morning, what is their why? Why do they want to get into sports? What's the whole purpose for them to doing it? So that's the number one attribute. I have never, in all of my hiring, and I've hired hundreds of people, I've never looked at someone's transcript. Never. I just don't. I don't care about grades. I care about, like, my parents. Do they have an energy? Because you may have a 3.5, but you really should have had a 4.0. And so that's why I just wanted the why is so in person to me. And then Troy, I'm a big believer and I talk about this in my book called The Look. And I tell people, ask me, like, how did you become a lawyer? What made you become a lawyer? After my accident, I wanted to become a doctor. I started off as a biology major. I wanted to become a surgeon, orthopedic surgeon. But in college, my freshman year, I had a close friend who had a brother who was interning for Thurgood Marshall on the Supreme Court. And I got a chance to go up to see the Supreme Court. And my friend's brother let me look in Thurgood Marshall's office. Didn't go in it, didn't meet Judge Marshall. He just said, just look in his office. And to this day, I call it The Look. I have a whole chapter on that. Just that look in his office, seeing that big desk, that big chair, and being able to look in his office changed my life. Said I want to be a lawyer. And so I'm a big believer of providing people with the look, just to look in it. So the thing I look for is purpose, passion, energy, and if someone can share what their why is. And if they do that, I'll find them a job. It may be with me, it may be with someone else I know, but I think those are the strongest attributes I would share with the young people.
Thank you. Couple other questions here. Who during this period of time in the last year, obviously a crazy year, and you were obviously in what I would call a public magnifying glass related to it. But who are some of your most unexpected allies that kind of floated to the top during that time?
That's an incredible question. I mean, Troy, and I'll say this, that we had you remember we set out on our patio at the house. Yeah. And, that day. And it's interesting. I mean, I knew you were always there for me, but just having an opportunity to talk with you and some of our other friends that day, socially distanced, to be able to talk with you were an incredible, ally there. Doug Baker, who's a former iconic CEO at Ecolab, he's a brilliant leader, but has a great sense of humor. He always was able to lighten the load. Shelley Eibach said something to me that I'll never forget. And I was right in the crux of last year's journey. But she talked about me. She said, Kevin, early on, you were focused on being right, doing it, getting it right. And I know that's your DNA. But she said, you got to recognize in the seat that you're in right now, right is important, but alignment is more important. And that was the day that and that was right after I had sat with you out on my patio and you encouraged me to stay the course. You gave me kind of solace that although we were in the eye of the storm, but that it would get better medically, because I was so focused on the day. And you told me it may not be for months, but we're going to get there. And but those are the people that came along. And then, you know, my wife Greta, who's just so, you know, sturdy. I'm a passionate person, but I'm not emotional. But having a steady partner, and that's why it's so important who you choose as your life partner. We're really there. And then my kids. But so it was a challenging time. And Paul Botts of good leadership played a really incredible role. My brother, you know, Morrison, who I talked about, who went to Stanford, he helped to put all this into context. And when people start telling you stories about Vietnam and all that, you kind of look at it. It helped open my eyes. So there were just so many people who I'll forever be grateful, you know, for during that time period. And I think their advice, wisdom, like your advice and wisdom to me, really helped change the world. And I think we made some great decisions, got things right. And, you know, we were able to pay 97.1% of our men's basketball games this year. A lot of the reason why that happened was the decisions that we made during the football season that may not have been overly popular, but we were setting the table for all of our sports and continuing to follow my promise of keeping our student athletes healthy and safe.
Yeah, speak to the lot of questions here related to the student athletes. I mean, obviously you're not even 2 years into this total. You've done a lot: mental health, social justice, created the Equality Coalition. What do you see as far as the future for Big Ten student athletes and coaches? And then the question everyone has, where do you sit as it relates to your thoughts on paying college student athletes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a wonderful question. I get it a lot. You know, one of the things that attracted me to this job is that we're in an inflection point in college athletics. And, you know, college athletics has changed my life. I mean, you think about it, my dad was a student athlete in the 40s, you know, different environment, but he was voted one of the 50 greatest players of Arizona State in the 40s, went and fought in the war, came back, finished his career. My brother was a student athlete at Stanford in the 60s. I was a student athlete in the 80s, and now my son is a student athlete. So we've been around, and I know how important athletics is. And I'm a big believer in the athletic model, meaning that our student athletes are not professional athletes. I was blessed to work in the NFL for 21 years and then to be a sports agent for 5 years. So I really have spent 26 out of my 31 working years in and around professional sports. It's a wonderful model, but it's for adults. And I look at our young student athletes on our campuses are typically anywhere between 17 and 23 years old. And so I'm a big believer in making sure that we keep the integrity of the athletic model that affords our student athletes an opportunity to get a world-class education. Because one thing, Troy, I know you recognize, I know for me, you know, when you're 17, when I went to school, 18, 19, 20 years old, the thing that seems the most important is what happens that day. And, you know, I never thought about what would my life look like at 50 and 55 and 57. That just wasn't on my radar. And by the grace of God, I'm grateful that I went to college. And it was the motivation of me getting out of that body cast. And there were a couple people in my neighborhood, and then my brother, my dad, who had been Division I student athletes. That was my driving force. So athletics drove me to college to get an education. Then when I got there, and then you get a professor like Mitchell Laird, who was an adjunct professor, taught me business law, to say, hey, you know, you should go get your MBA before you go to law school. And then I go, you know, it's just so, I say all that to say it's important to get our young people on college campuses. They may find something they like, even our athletes. And I'm a big believer, and I saw it. We find in the NFL, in the NBA, and Major League Baseball and hockey, if you're talented, you'll be able to play professionally, literally, regardless of where you go, what happens. So I believe in the model of college athletics. Now, that being said, are we at a point where changes need to be made? Yes. And that's why you're seeing all this discussion on name, image, and likeness, and which we'll talk about it. But we're at an inflection point. And so we have a Supreme Court case pending now with the Alston case. You have House case. You have Oliver. You have all the legislation being put forth by various people in Congress with name, image, and likeness. So that is something that I'm already like the Energizer Bunny when I get up in the morning, that I'm really excited about, to be involved of how do we frame this. And I've said all along, whatever we decide to do, I want us to be thoughtful. I want us to be methodical. I want us to be pragmatic because, again, so many times people in life, whatever business you're in, focus on, we need to get more money. We need to get, we need to get paid. Well, I'm a big believer is that if we're going to create this new environment, we need to make sure that our student athletes and their families are really educated on how to handle the money. What is increase, revenue to a household? How does it impact your tax situation? So has the time come with a new motto? There deserves to be a new motto? Absolutely. But I want to make sure as we create this motto that we have the voice of the student athlete involved with it. We take the long-term approach, with it, and that we're very methodical to make sure that we do the very best that we possibly can to protect our student athletes, not only while they're in college, but after they graduate and actually as they enter into the workforce.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. I think we got time for a couple more here, but one, just touching on the social justice side, and you've been fairly outspoken on that. You were very donating your time and spoke to our staff related to just the DEI space. And the question is, or that has come in, is what have you seen other, I'll say, world-class business leaders, what are they doing in this space? Or what are you seeing in the social justice space today that is working? And what do you see that others can be doing more of?
That's a great question. And I think we've shared this. I think the biggest thing, and it's unfortunate about the murder of George Floyd and all the different issues that have happened, but I always look for, the positive energy that comes out of it. The positive energy about what we faced last year is that there's certain things. Now, you and I have a trusting relationship. So there's certain things that you and I have talked about even before the pandemic or social justice of 2020, because I trust you. But for the most part, a lot of the issues now that we're talking about, we only talked about around our dinner table or around our very, very close friends or people that we play golf with or people that we travel with, maybe in our churches, our synagogues, but we weren't able to talk about it. The beauty of what happened last year, even in the middle of all this pain, is that now it has become a public discourse. Young people are talking about it. Older people are talking about it. White people, Black people, people of color, people with money, people with no money, educated people, uneducated people. And so it takes that kind of situation to create an environment where now we can start now working for solutions. Because until you identify and recognize that people are willing to raise their hand to say that we have some issues regarding race, not being judgmental, not poking anyone in the eye, not making anyone feel guilty, but we have some social issues. We have some race-related issues. We have some things that, because we all are a product of our environment, that we need to deal with. And I think that's the benefit of last year. So to your question, what are leaders doing who are doing it the right way? They're creating a forum to allow people the comfortability, either in their home, in their workplaces, in their communities, in society, to talk about these issues. Because I believe in the goodness of people. My parents raised me that way. I don't look at people from a white or Black or rich or poor standpoint. I believe in the goodness of people. And there's so many people who have just a good core constitution who may have never gone to college, who may be struggling, who may be dealing with addiction, but we can learn something from everyone. And so I think what happened last year, it afforded us an opportunity. And I think what I'm trying to do at the Big Ten is create an environment for our student athletes to feel comfortable to talk about these issues for us in society. So I think last year, although it was a challenging year, but it was an important year. And I think the great leaders are the ones who are creating that environment wherever they are to encourage people to be able to talk about these issues. And so long as we do that, then we can start working toward a solution.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's creating that open forum and where people feel comfortable and safe having that discussion. Time for one more question. I apologize. We're not able to get through all of the questions here. But speak to philanthropy, and you and your wife Greta have been very generous with that, in the Minneapolis-St. Paul market as well as other markets. Just speak to the importance of that in your life and why that is important, and why it frankly should be important to others.
Mhm. I mean, it goes back to my parents, and I'll share one story, and I'll try to get through it just without getting emotional about it. My mother had a rough life. Her mom was from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. Snuck across the border, was a maid for many of the wealthy families. Never had a license. Never flew on a plane. Never drove a car, but never was late for an appointment. And so I think part of where I get my work ethic from is I would go with my grandmother to clean these houses. I think that's one of the reasons why I've wondered, like, where did I get my taste from? And I didn't get it in the house we grew up in. It was because I'd grown up cleaning some of these houses, and then talk about crown molding and hardwood floors, and travertine. I learned all that stuff. And but that my mom, because with that, and then so my grandfather on my mom's side was from Fort Huachuca, um, uh, um, Arizona. He was a soldier, but about 8th grade, my mom came home from school. My grandfather left. She never saw him again. So I never met my grandfather on my mom's side. So although my mom was a certified genius, brilliant, but she had a lot of pain in her. So she gave a lot. And the reason why, I think one of the reasons that philanthropy is so important to me, my mom gave a $25 book scholarship because she was a librarian. She loved libraries. She loved reading. That's where I get my desire to read. That's why I love traveling, because she would always make me pick out a different place on the globe in the library. And fortunately, I've been able to travel to most of those places now, which I never thought I would be. But my mom gave this 25 book scholarship. And I'll tell you, as a kid, I was very judgmental about that scholarship. And we'd go to these award ceremonies. She'd give out these $25 book scholarship. And, me being a little snarky, little spoiled little kid, I would say to myself, what really does $25 mean? At my mother's funeral, 50 years later, some of those people who got that scholarship showed up at her funeral and came up to me and said, the $25 that your mom gave to me, it wasn't a lot of money. It allowed me to buy a book, but what it said is that someone believed in them. And those people have gone on to be leaders, teachers, executives, doctors, lawyers, firefighters. And I think that's the environment I grew up around. So I'm a big believer, not looking at the number of what you give, but the fact that you really never know what a gift will mean to someone. Not the amount, just the act. And so I think that's one of the reasons why, and Greta's the same way. And so every once in a while, and I don't have any down days, I'm just grateful to be here. But we have stuff in Chicago, and we're doing so much stuff with kids, with a lot of stuff we don't advertise. But I've kept my relationship with the University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital, and they send me a monthly report about our gifts there. And when you think you're having a bad day, and you read a report about a 7-year-old kid who's dealing with brain cancer, and that their family can't drive down from Iowa for the surgery because they had a flat tire and they were waiting to another payday to get a tire, to be able to pay for a tire for them or cover 2 nights of a hotel. All of those different things has really changed the world. And I think that's one of the reasons why I recognize the importance of being able to help people in need.
No, awesome. I really appreciate you sharing that story. And I think that is the last question here. I do, Kevin and I share a lot of laughs together, so I just have to share one thing that went through my head when you made a statement here a few minutes ago. Is I pictured you in a pink bunny suit as the enterprise bunny.
Right.
That'll bring some good laughs to everybody to think of that. But, I really appreciate your time, Kevin. Appreciate the messages. Always can take away things from any time I hear you talk, and wish you nothing but good health and and enjoy what the run you're on in the Big Ten. And it's fun to watch, and it's just fun to see the energy and everything you bring to everything you do. So thank you for your time.
Well, Troy, I appreciate you so much. Like I said, you know me, I don't ask for a lot. I only ask for 4 Big Ten teams in the Final Four, and that's it. So that's the only thing I'm hoping for right now. So I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you stand for, and everything that everyone at Concordia is doing, and Dean Mason and President Kraft. I really appreciate what you all stand for. So thank you, and I'll always be a fan of yours. And any way I can help, I'm here to help, and I'll do all that I can to make everyone in the Twin Cities proud.
Thank you, Kevin. And on behalf of Concordia College and the Offutt School of Business, let me again express my thanks to Kevin and Troy for a great program. As I was listening, Kevin, and connecting with what Troy was asking as well, there's 25 things I can mention that connect with your life, your values, your leadership, your all-in approach. You're driven by values and faith. So many things that are core with Concordia, and particularly the Offutt School of Business. But the thing that I took away is you recognize that you are where you are because of others helping you up, whether it's a strong mom and dad, mentors in the business community, outside the business community, and the fact that you're also doing the same, that you're helping others up. And very clearly you helped others up today, and certainly left this place better because the time we spent today together. And so it's very much appreciated. So many people have also helped to make the event great, and special thanks to our partners and sponsorship, Revo Health, Dean and Ryan Haagensen of Real Estate, Remax Real Estate, Next Century Growth Partners, and Herc and Associates. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the hard work of Carol Hedberg, Michelle Brislin, Kristen, and all the IT staff to have made this a great event. If you have suggestions for future speakers or are interested in learning more about ways to engage with our students as mentors or with internships, reach out to anyone on our staff. And thank you for joining us, and have a great day.
Well, thank you. God bless you all. Have a great day. Troy, I'll talk soon. Take care.